Hello and welcome back. In this second chapter of this Synth Showdown trilogy between Serum and Vital, I'm gonna discuss filters and effects. If someone points out, actually George R.R. Martin's books are not free and making this a trilogy is an abuse, well, yes, they're right. Anyway, going to the filtering section of both synths, Serum offers us one filter. It is, though, a very powerful filter. It has a considerable number of modes. There's this two-level menu in which you have a bunch of normal filters. This multi filters which allow you to have, for example, low pass and high pass, low pass and band pass with several different slopes, low pass, band pass, high pass, low pass, band pass, high pass, and then the peak filters too. Now, the thing is with all these multi options is that no matter how you do it, you see this is band and peak. If I change the frequency of the peak, if I then go and raise the resonance, I raise the resonance of both, and there is no way to decouple them, have them independent. Then they have this interesting feature, which is this stereo knob, which unusually for Serum doesn't give you any visual feedback of what is happening. What is happening is that you are offsetting the cutoff frequency between the right and the left channel, as Serum filter is stereo, which was a thing I saw first in Zebra's XMF filter almost a decade ago or so. Yet this seems like an added feature compared to Vital filter, but it isn't because, Vital has its own way with stereo panning and stereo modulations, which we'll cover deeper in the next video. We have a drive knob, which, as you can see on the visual effect, it really also has quite an effect on the volume. And in some case, there is this, you see, this other parameter apart from the cutoff and resonance, which you would find in basically any filter. You have that other knob, which has different functions according to what filter you've picked. For example, if you go for most of the basic ones, it just gives fat, doesn't give you any visual response, but it's just volume. Then you might go for in the miscellanea menu, which is really the most interesting part, I think, of Serum filters, because it has a lot of interesting different modes which have unusual applications, really. I mean, you wouldn't usually use a filter this way, but there's, for example, this reverb filter which has found its way into a lot of tracks. And this formants, which they're definitely how you would use filter. But hey, you see here, you have both the cutoff and the formant knob. They move these peaks in different ways, and of course, you can modulate them independently and do lots of interesting things with it. There is a whole menu of comb and flange and phasor filters, some of which do include a damping high pass or low pass filter. And that's it. You have one. You can choose from the filter what you're routing to it. And you can send or unsend things to them. When nothing is being sent to a filter, even if it's on, it gets grayed out, which can be handy, if you just to know that you have something which you've turned on and you're not actually using. Going to Vital. Vital has two filters, filter 1 and filter 2. You can route whatever you want to them. I mean, you can route any of the 3 oscillators or the sample player or the output of the other filter. You cannot route the output of a filter and then go back. If you would like, for example, say filter 1, you automatically remove filter 2. There is apparently way less knobs, but the thing is compensated by these sliders all around the visual interface, which of course you can also use to move it. You drag up and it drives up the resonance, go left and right and move the frequency. You have a drive knob, which doesn't seem to do anything on the graphics interface. It doesn't give you any visual feedback, and it does what you would expect, but it works very differently from Serum ones because this is gain compensated. You can crank the drive up in a filter and it will not raise the volume. you have a mix knob, just like this one in Serum, with the difference that this one is a mix knob and is only a mix knob, while the one in Serum, thanks to a recent update, can be turned into a level, which allows you to control the post-filter volume before entering the effects. This might seem like a minor feature, but it would really do great if Vital had something similar. Because, for example, there's a bunch of possible things you might do in which, since you have two filters, you might want to balance the volume coming out of one and the other. And well, I don't think we really have a way to do that. I mean, I mean, if you happen to have something that doesn't happen to be that properly volume balanced, having a chance to do that would be nice. Also, another thing which I found, I wouldn't say disturbing, but well, see here you can, unlike in Serum, as we mentioned in the previous video, in which you can send to direct out only the noise and the sub, and you know, saying something you want to send it to the effects is quite easily done. Even it's the same thing here. Just don't send it to a filter; it goes to the effects. While there is nothing you can do once something has hit the filter. Once something has hit the filter, it will be sent to the effects section. Why? Can we change that? Well, it would be, I mean, it would really be nice. I think here there is a little bit of redundancy. As you can see, you can choose where sources are going, and then you can choose from filters what is going to them independently. Like, you know, I can turn this off and now this goes to effects. I mean, this is redundant. It's the two controls doing the same thing. This is not that useful, while I think it would be very nice to have something that tells you where the signal from the filter is going and not having only one option. I mean, that would be great. How do these filters sound? Good question. Now, it is, I wouldn't say pointless, but it is not that easy to compare them as a whole, you know, without making any hypothesis about them. But there's a bunch of situations, actually a few ones, in which they behave similarly. So, for example, here we have, or at least they try to behave similarly. So here we have, for example, that there is in Vital we have a ladder filter, and in Serum here, let me open this Serum, and in Serum we have a MG filter. Now, as you probably know, MG stands for Moog or Moog, or how do you pronounce it? I have no idea. I really have no idea how you pronounce it. I'm not going into that debate anyway. You know what we're talking about. The filter patented and made popular by the godfather of East Coast synthesis now over like 4 decades ago. And that's it. So here we have the emulation of it from Steve Duda's Serum and the one from Matt Title's Vital. Having them put at the same frequency, modulated by an LFO with the same frequency and same shape, having everything put in the same situation, what happens? This is Vital, and this is Serum. I don't know if you hear some difference. I do. It's slight, but it's definitely there. And it's already there if we're looking at filters with resonance to 0. When we start driving some resonance up, things get dramatically different. Like if resonance gets to like 50% in Serum, we have something like this. While in order to have something sounding similar in Vital, you don't need to crank the resonance that up. I mean, somewhere around 20-22%. It's not the same, you agree, but you know, we're having that the resonant peak is approximately at the same level and just as relevant. If we drive Vital's filter resonance to 50%, it will sound well differently. I mean, you hear that now they're incomparable, and the way they behave. sorry, I'm moving the wrong parameter. Got it back here. See here, in both cases, these filters, even when cranked up, when the resonance is cranked up, they don't really kill the low end as the real thing notoriously does, which is, well, both a feat and a bug, because if you, I mean, yeah, it's a feat because it makes it a much more usable filter, makes the resonance much more interesting to use in a lot of scenarios, but at the same time, it's not a faithful recreation of the original. There's other models, there's definitely other models, but they are incomparable in the sense that, well, we might decide you like one more than the other, but there's really not much of a chance to say, because like this analog and these low normal, I know that Serum low pass filter is modeling a state variable filter, but here, even without any resonance, you will realize they sound, I wouldn't say dramatically different, but quite different. So going into the detail of how each one sounds is, I think, a waste of time and just talking about. But what I can say about Vital filter is, well, it works quite differently. It doesn't have any less parameters because this extra knob here is compensated by this thing here, because every single filter in Vital can be morphed. Say here it's an analog 24 dB. What do you mean? It's a low pass, a high pass, a band pass. What 24 dB what? Well, it's both a low pass and it's both. It's three. There is no such a thing as both for when the options are three, if I remember. I don't know it. Tell me about it. My English isn't that good. And then here you can morph it into a high pass, and keeping the model exactly the same, you can go for 12 dB. You can go for different shapes. Like there is this notch blend, which works the same, just in the middle is not a band pass but a band reject. And there is this notch spread, which is a band pass, which becomes a notch, which in the middle is this sort of a double notch filter, kind of interesting, which reacts to resonance in an interesting way. And then there is this BPN, which is a band pass, a peak filter, and then a notch filter. They can have all their various applications, because if you understand this too, this is a modulation destination. You can have you can dynamically change the shape of your filter with something, with an LFO, with an envelope, and make something interesting out of it. Yet, I do think, as far as simple filtering options go and their common music applications, I still think Serum's filter holds a little bit of an edge. It's solid, creamy, and somehow has a sound which reminds you of a lot of things you've heard. I mean, I think it's really not the most interesting use of a synth like this to just make simple subtractive patches out of it, but you can, and they're very effective. I'm not saying you can't do it in Vital and they will not be as effective, but I'd rather go for this filter for doing, something like pluck or something like that, and rely on other features of Vital for doing similar things. I mean, Vital has lots of other ways to filter. You can have a filter here. You can have one from a low pass or a high pass from here. You can have a frequency filter inside the wavetable editor. So actually, the filter, you might end up using it more as a coloring tool than your main sound shaping tool. I think this would be a proper, wise use of the instrument's capabilities. I mean, using Vital as a simple subtractive synth seems like, well, not the best use of it. And yet, yes, I'm saying Serum has only one filter. This miscellaneous menu offers a huge amount of options, and they're all very, very nice. Not all, but most of them are very, very nice. I particularly like this German LP because it's a zero delay feedback filter and sounds very, very creamy and natural somehow, while Vital doesn't have any of that. Yet it's a way younger plugin. There's plenty of time for development, and I'm quite sure we'll have better and more filtering options in the future. But at the moment, if we had to think of a one filter configuration, I'd rather pick Serum's filter. On the other hand, Vital has two, and that makes a whole world of difference. I mean, it's one of those things. I actually almost get the impression, I wouldn't say I suffer from it, because when I try to make patches, making good use of combs as shaping tools, I found myself deprived of a filter, having to go into the effects section and using the effects filter, and therefore making my whole patch monophonic, which maybe was not really what I wanted to do, and that therefore I'd be happier with a double filter configuration. It's, in this case, definitely more is more. More is not less. So with the filters out of the way, well, not quite. I mean, going back here, we have the options it gives. It's there a lot. There's this diode filters, which are only low shelf and low cut, and they're also morphable. As you can see here, this can be morphed. And the same goes for the low shelf, though they each morph differently and have different behavior, and especially when you move them. The cutoff and the resonance. The Foreman filters, which are conveniently named after the vowels they're making, which is nicer. Here you have this 1, 2, and 3. What do they mean? And there's this menu of comb filters, and I really don't understand the difference between a comb and a flange filter. Because, as you sure know, a flanger is a comb filter, and they're both different applications of a very short delay. So why are both the synths telling me there is a comb filter and a flange filter? Yeah, one is plus or minus, both can have, both feedback and feed-forward behavior. But then I keep wondering, why are they? What is the difference between a flange and a comb? In this case, there's a difference that the comb includes both negative and positive resonance, while the zero resonance or feedback is at the middle at 50%, while for the flange you have plus and minus independently. This is it. And they're also morphable, because it isn't that obvious, but this cutoff knob actually controls a sort of a damp filter, and you can shape that rather than the comb, so it's turning it from one thing to another. And that's definitely an interesting thing. You see, this slider controls the frequency of the comb, and this one controls the damping frequency. Like in this case, let's make it more obvious. See here, if I put the cutoff to the max, it's all open, and then the higher harmonics get progressively dampened and lowered, which for making, how would you call them, physical modeling patches, plugs, or maybe strings, can be very, very helpful. I mean, I really like doing patches this way. So now I think we have filters out of the way, and let's go into effects. Now, here they are FX, and here they are FX. Quite a difference. And they work in a very similar way. I would dare saying that the way the effects section is organized in Vital is probably directly derived from that in Serum, and I personally don't like it very much. It like rack, and like you turn single effects on, and it makes this fake. You see, there's even fake screws. Makes this modules appear, and the same here. Even though here they look like they're half rack units, much more believable as far as effects go in the hardware world. And you can turn them on and turn them off, and every single one of them as a mix knob, and a bunch of others. In Serum case, the mix knob can be turned into a level knob, like just for the filter, and here it can't. Now, the only main difference in the effects, like in the whole, array of effects, is this hyperdimension thing, because Vital doesn't have it. But it really doesn't need it. I'll get into it in shortly, because like here we have this hyperdimension, which can do this. There is this sort of hyper, which is a sort of a micro delay based chorus with up to 7 unison voices, and then there is this dimension, which according to the manual is a pseudo stereo effect based on 4 delay lines, and then there is chorus, which is a 4-voice chorus and only a 4-voice chorus, which is cool. I mean, yeah, it's still a chorus. It does its job. Here we have a chorus which goes up to 16 voices. It can be only 4. It can't be any less than 4. It can be 4, but it's much more feature dense and impressive. Like the frequency can be changed into seconds and can go from up to 64 seconds and up to 0 point. It can go very short, or even go, if you go to another way like tempo, you can go to the point of freezing it. What's the use of a frozen chorus? Well, more than you think. You can do lots of things with a frozen chorus, and of course you have the mandatory feedback and feedback control and a filter, which is very interesting. Here you have both a possibility of controlling this, basically a high pass and a low pass with a single knob, which is called spread, and decide where you want the band or the chorus you want to act on, and 2 independent delay controls. It's very nice. And also it offers you this, if you go away from freeze, offers you this interesting animation. As you can see the voices turning around and moving, which, I mean, this is really a very nice chorus. And then there's a flanger, which is just as feature rich and visually impressive, a lot more than this flanger, I have to say, because this just looks like an kind of featureless rack. And this one has definitely more knobs, more parameters, and this interesting possibilities of acting on it directly from the interface. And you can freeze these two, whether you like it, whether you might find it useful or you might not. Now let's get to the most this effect really gets me thinking. The compressor. Now in Serum you can have this simple compressor, which works in a kind of predictable way, with the difference that the threshold works in reverse. Like, the higher you put it, the lower the threshold goes. They wanted, probably they took a page from a meme page which said, hey, the threshold is a trick knob. You don't have to crank it to the max. You have to pull it to the minimum to have the maximum effect. And so since they're aiming at people who need to see everything, and simple people, probably they said, hey, let's not make the threshold a trick knob. But you can also turn it into a multi-band compressor, which kind of resembles the Ableton OTT, or, and also gives you the chance to have upward compression and not only downward compression. Here, it seems, no matter what, it seems it's even more complex. Here you can have it in this mode, in which is properly multi-band. You can have low band, which gives you a low band and a band, which covers all the rest. High band, just the opposite. There's a wider band for the lows and the mids, and one here. And you can go single band. How does it work? You can have, let's go back to multi-band. You have you have the volume for every band, the mix of the compressor. Attack and release, I don't really understand why I only have 2, because I expect to have the individual bands to be maybe reacting differently in time. And then here we have this interface, which is very complex. I mean, I have to confess, it wasn't immediately understandable. You see here you have a threshold for the upward compression, and here you have the threshold for the downward compression, but you can turn it into upward expansion, and you can turn this thing into downward expansion or upward compression. You can do lots of things. It's very feature dense, and I honestly wouldn't use such a complex compressor on a single patch of a synth, but it's definitely an added feature. The only point with this is that it's not so intuitive and so immediate to understand, and you might take some time and some work to get good results out of it. Let's go to other effects. There's the EQ module, and now let me turn some of these off. The EQ module here has 2 bands, while Vital wanted to do more, and so it has 3. And apart from this, there's really some difference. This can be turned from being a low pass to I meant high pass to a low shelf, and this can be turned from being a notch to how is it called? A bell-shaped band, and the same here goes from being a high shelf to a low pass. It's quite a simple 3-band parametric EQ. Then there's the phaser, which again gives you lots of amazing visual feedback for what is happening. This too can be frozen, can it? Yes. And well, it's a little bit better than this phaser as far as looks goes, because this one, just like the Flanger, looks kind of featureless, which in my opinion isn't necessarily a bug, because you see, I'm seeing all this wonderful visual, all these wonderful things, which, I'm not saying by far this is only eye candy, because seeing this makes you understand a lot of things and makes programming a lot easier. But on the other hand, I wish I could turn all this off, because it's not like I'm programming it all the time. I don't know if I got it wrong, and maybe when I'm not looking at it, when I close the panel, all these animations are not being made. But unless you have you see, computing power is precious, and is something I'd rather devote to audio than to this. Well, I don't know, maybe they're incredibly smart, and they made it in a way that as I said before, when I'm not looking at them, these things are not being calculated at all. But maybe that is not the case, and that kind of worries me. So, like, I'd rather not even turn on an effect at times, because I'm worried even just the interface will clog my processor. And it's not such a crappy processor. Yeah, it's a bit old, but still does the job. Now, let's get to another interesting piece, which is we could mention all of them. Like, I could go into and talk about the delay, which really there isn't much to say about the delay here, because the delay, where is the delay? Delay here. It has a lot of visual feedback too, and there's several modes, and it's really not such a surprising delay. In this case, we have both having a filter for it, and independent things for this thing. And let's go for the reverb, which is really an interesting thing. Now, I really like this reverb. I really do. And while I'm not saying I don't like Serum Reverb, Serum Reverb, according to the manual, is based on tall plate emulation. And here you can also have it set as a whole. When you switching from one to the other changes the names of parameters, so that they work differently. It sounds nice. I suppose you've all heard it in plenty of tracks. This one, on the other hand, has a lot of visual interface and a lot more knobs, and it sounds very, very nice. I'm really liking it, though I very rarely use internal reverbs, for dressing up patches properly. Is a very, very nice tool, and is very, very, it's a breeze to program. I really like it. I said it already, and well, yeah. So this is it about effects. They are very, very much the same. Now, one thing I have to object to Vital's architecture is that, you see, Serum is a simple synth. Though, someone say it's a dream wavetable synth. Yes, it is. But at the same time, it is designed to be simple. It is intended to be simple. It has few oscillators. It has only one filter. So it does make sense that effects are just routed serially, one into the other, and then go again. Here, you have 2 filters. You have 3 oscillators. You have a lot of different possibilities, and I would definitely welcome a chance to, send parts of my signal to different effects chain, which is something which is not that revolutionary. I mean, it could be done on a Novation Ultranova, which is a hardware synth with a display this big and came out almost 10 years ago. And you could make crazy routings of effects. While here I have a rack, and it's serial, and if I send something to a filter, it will be sent to all the effects. So I either don't use the effects or use them on everything I have decided to send to a filter. I wouldn't say this is crippling, because Vital really is a endless well of sound design possibilities. I'm really, really happy with it. I'm diving and delving into it. I'm really loving its possibilities, but this would definitely be a wonderful welcome addition. Well, I know my title and the developers there are surely very, very busy working on it, and even just on writing the manual, which still isn't there. But this would make for me a huge difference, because like having one single effects bus is limiting. I mean, it gets me to the point in which I'd rather end up using two different instances or not using effects at all. And why should I? I mean, it's not like it's something so revolutionary that hasn't been done in other plugins or in hardware synths. So, here we got at the end of the second chapter of this Synth Showdown trilogy between Vital and Serum, and thank you for staying with me this long. In the next chapter, and I hope you'll be there, I'll be discussing the modulation sources and the modulation options, which are, in my opinion, the real ace up the sleeve with Vital, and the thing which puts it, which really makes the competition more interesting. Thank you again. See you soon.